Hello, all you freedom-loving people. President Trump was awarded the highest honors in Israel and Egypt today after speaking at the Knesset and signing the Gaza peace plan with the mediators. A funny moment was caught on the hot mic with Prime Minister Carney. And is Musk picking a fight with Altman? Okay, let's get into it. Today, President Trump arrived in Israel as Hamas released 20 hostages as a part of the Gaza peace deal that he brokered. Air Force One touched down at Ben Gurion International Airport at around 9:30 a.m. local time. It flew over Hostages Square in Tel Aviv, where tens of thousands of people had gathered. President Trump was greeted by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli President Isaac Herzog, U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee, Israeli Envoy to Washington Yael Leader, Special Envoy to the Middle East Steve Witkoff, his son-in-law Jared Kushner, and his daughter Ivanka Trump, among others. Netanyahu and President Trump, joined by President Isaac Herzog, walked a red carpet from Air Force One to the presidential motorcade as a military band played. Netanyahu rode with President Trump in the U.S. presidential limousine known as the Beast, and the two departed for the Knesset. Prior to President Trump's arriving in Israel, the Israeli military had already confirmed that 7 hostages had been released. The 7 hostages crossed into Israel, and they were first transferred to a military base in southern Israel, and they were reunited with their families, and then they were taken by helicopter to Israeli hospitals. Then later, it was confirmed that a second group of 13 hostages had been handed over to the Red Cross in southern Gaza. The Israeli military also confirmed that 13 hostages were escorted by Israeli Defense Forces and Israel Security Agency personnel in Gaza on their way back to Israel. On his way to the parliament, President Trump met with the families of the 20 hostages that were freed today, and he listened to their stories. He then signed the guest book at the Knesset.
We'll be here and then everyone should call back. Okay? I'm perfect. You want to lift things? I'm good. Yes, sir.
In history, only 3 U.S. presidents have addressed the Israeli parliament, the Knesset. President Jimmy Carter in 1979, President Bill Clinton in 1994, and President George W. Bush in 2008. Arriving at the Israeli parliament, President Trump was greeted with prolonged applause and a standing ovation as he stood before the Knesset ahead of his address. Israeli lawmakers also welcomed members of the delegation of President Trump with a standing ovation and cheers. The delegation included Steve Witkoff, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Jared Kushner, Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee, and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. Then, Knesset Speaker Amir Ohana, the opposition leader Yair Lapid, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the assembly in a special session that was convened in President Trump's honor. In his address to the Knesset, Netanyahu thanked President Trump for helping in the release of all Israeli living hostages. He described President Trump as the greatest friend Israel has ever had in the White House, and he called the day momentous.
At the beginning of the war, I promised to bring all the hostages home. Today, with the indispensable help, the determined and focused help, the unremitting help of President Trump and his team, and with the incredible sacrifice and courage of the soldiers of Israel, we are fulfilling that promise.
Then President Trump addressed the assembly. President Trump hailed the historic dawn of a new Middle East as he began his address.
This is not only the end of a war, this is the end of an age of terror and death, and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God. It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region. I believe that so strongly. This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East.
Then President Trump's speech was briefly interrupted by a far-left Israeli Knesset member who began shouting, but he was removed from the chamber very quickly. Knesset Speaker Ohana apologized to President Trump, and he responded that that was very efficient. Then President Trump continued his speech as the Knesset members cheered and chanted President Trump's name. President Trump recalled the October 7th attack and what has happened since that day. President Trump also went beyond these 2 years, saying that it has been years since there was true peace in the region. But President Trump said, now everything has changed with a new coalition of proud and responsible nations emerging, and he praised the IDF for their bravery and incredible skill.
All across the Middle East, the forces of chaos, terror, and ruin that have plagued the region for decades now stand weakened, isolated, and totally defeated. A new coalition of proud and responsible nations is emerging, and because of us, the enemies of all civilization are in retreat. Thanks to the bravery and incredible skill of the Israeli Defense Forces and Operation Rising Lion, guy's central casting. Let's put him in a movie. Look at him. Great job. And my people loved working with you. Loved it. They worked so well together. But many of Iran's top terrorists, including nuclear scientists and commanders, have been extinguished from this earth.
President Trump also joked with Netanyahu, telling him that now he can be a bit nicer.
Mr. Opposition Leader. I said he's a very nice opposition leader. I think, no, he's a nice man. Bibi, he's a nice man. He knows what he's doing, right? No, he's a very nice guy. Well, see, now you can be a little bit nicer, Bibi, because you're not at war anymore, Bibi.
President Trump also asked the president of Israel on the spot to give Netanyahu a pardon, who was on trial for corruption.
Hey, I have an idea. Mr. President, why don't you give him a pardon? Give him a pardon. Come on. By the way, that was not in the speech, as you probably know. But I happen to like this gentleman right over here, and it just seems to make so much sense. You know, whether we like it or not, this has been one of the greatest wartime presidents. This has been one of the greatest wartime presidents. And cigars and champagne, who the hell cares about that?
President Trump also explained why, if they had not attacked Iran, then they would not have the Gaza peace deal that they have today.
So we dropped 14 bombs on Iran's key nuclear facilities, totally, as I said originally, obliterating them. And that's been confirmed, and everybody understands it. Together we stopped the #1 state sponsor of terror from obtaining the world's most dangerous weapons. And if you think about it, if we didn't do that, and assuming we made the same deal that we have today, there'd be a dark cloud over this deal. And #1, it wouldn't happen because the other Arab and Muslim nations really wouldn't feel comfortable making the deal that we have now, right? if Iran had that nuclear weapon that they were about 2 months away from having. They would have had it in 2 months or maybe less than that. They were right at, this was our last shot. They looked at it for 22 years. This was our last shot. The pilots told me that. They said, 22 years, sir. They looked at it. Our predecessors looked, they studied it. 3 times a year would do drills on that exact attack. And boy, did they get it right. But let's assume they didn't, and let's assume there was large-scale nuclear weapons in the hands of Iran. We couldn't be here today. Even if we signed the deal, which we couldn't do because a lot of people would not want to have anything to do with it, we took a big cloud off of the Middle East and off of Israel.
President Trump also said that a peace deal with Iran will be done easily, but his priority is to focus on the Ukraine and Russia peace deal first.
Somebody said, sir, they're starting their nuclear program again. I said, let me tell you something. They're not starting anything. They want to survive. The last thing they want to do is start digging holes again in mountains that just got blown up and start, they're not doing, they want to survive, okay? But I think we have a chance. Steve, you, and I think Jared, come on, I'll call you back for another one. We always bring Jared when we want to get that deal closed. We bring Jared, but Steve, you and Jared and the General and Pete and Marco, you'll get that deal done easy. I think that'll be easy. But first we have to get Russia done. We got to get that one done. If you don't mind, Steve, let's focus on Russia first, all right? We'll get it done.
Then President Trump said that now the total focus of Gazans must be on restoring the fundamentals.
After tremendous pain and death and hardship, now is the time to concentrate on building their people up instead of trying to tear Israel down. We don't want that to happen again. And the total focus of Gazans must be on restoring the fundamentals of stability, safety, dignity, and economic development so they can finally have the better life that their children really do deserve after all these decades of horror. I intend to be a partner in this effort in the sense that we're going to help and we're going to do something that became unbelievably popular. Everybody wants to be on it. It's called the Board of Peace.
And he called the nations of the region not to be enemies, but to be partners and eventually even friends.
Than ever that the productive and responsible nations of this region should not be enemies or adversaries. You should be partners and eventually even friends, and that's what's going to happen. I know it. Together you can stand against the forces of chaos. Yeah, you go ahead. That's an important point. Because you can stand against the forces of chaos that threatened all of your interests, and it's always a big threat, and unleash incredible prosperity and opportunity for all the people of these lands.
President Trump even said to Iran and its regime that has brought so much death into the Middle East that the hands of friendship and cooperation are open.
Yet even to Iran, whose regime has inflicted so much death on the Middle East, the hand of friendship and cooperation is open. I'm telling you, they want to make a deal. That's all I do in my life. I make deals. I'm good at it. I've always been good at it. And I know when they want. Even if they said, we don't want to make a deal, I can tell you they want to make a deal. All right, they do. They want to make a deal, and we're going to see if we can do something because this is crazy what's happening, and we're not going to have this anymore. Neither the United States nor Israel bear the people of Iran any hostility. We merely want to live in peace. We don't want any looming threats over our heads, and we don't want to even think in terms of nuclear destruction. It's not going to happen, never will happen.
After President Trump's address at the Knesset, the buses of freed Palestinian prisoners that rolled into the Palestinian Authority headquarters in the West Bank were also met by cheering crowds. More than 1,900 prisoners were released as part of the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. At the same time, Hamas posted pictures on Facebook that showed the prisoners in white baseball caps outside Nasser Hospital in Gaza. The next stage of the deal is expected to be the disarmament of Hamas and the demilitarization of the Gaza Strip. However, some senior security officials believe that Israel's key challenge now will be maintaining security in the West Bank. They believe that Hamas plans to turn the West Bank into its new theater of operations against Israel under the leadership of Hamas's West Bank military wing. They surmise that the release of hundreds of heavy terrorists could strengthen Hamas in the West Bank and ignite a new wave of terror. In practice, Hamas will no longer remain a functioning governing body in the Gaza Strip, but it's not yet clear to them whether Hamas will agree to the plan for this part. Then, today, there was the international summit in the Egyptian resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh. President Trump left Israel for the summit and to oversee the signing of the deal to end the war. Netanyahu did not accompany President Trump for the summit, even though he was invited. This was because of the summit falling on a Jewish holiday. Israeli leaders traditionally avoid traveling on Jewish Sabbath and holidays, except in extraordinary circumstances. But more than 20 world leaders joined President Trump for the summit. It was attended by leaders of the UK, Germany, France, Italy, Turkey, Jordan, Canada, and Qatar, as well as the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres and the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas was also present. Before signing the deal, all the leaders joined President Trump for a photo. Then President Trump gave a short speech before signing.
We've already signed documents in the Middle East and having to do with Israel and Hamas and just about everything else. And it's really working out incredibly well. The hostages, as you know, were let go on time, on schedule. The very sad situation of bodies, which was always a sad situation, and they're being sought out, and they're working with many different people, finding some were brought in and some were not. And they're working out to find out where those bodies are. It's hard to believe that you even have to say something like that. It's so sad. It's so sad. But what's not sad is that we have finally, after, I guess they say 3,000 years, I've heard from 3,000 years to 500 years, but whatever it is, it's a lot. But this was the one, this was the granddaddy of them all. And frankly, I thought this was probably going to be the toughest.
President Trump and the mediators then signed the deal to end the war between Israel and Hamas. And after the signing, there was talking and laughter among the leaders. At one point, President Trump pointed at the UAE president and said, "A lot of cash, unlimited cash."
Egypt has to go,
And then President Trump addressed the world leaders and declared an end to the war in Gaza.
This is the day that people across the region and around the world have been working, striving, hoping, and praying for. They have done things over the last month that I think were really unthinkable. Nobody thought this could happen. With the historic agreement we've just signed, those prayers of millions have finally been answered.
After the address, President Trump and Canada's Prime Minister Carney were caught on a hot mic laughing after President Trump called Carney president instead of Prime Minister. But at least he didn't call him governor.
Thanks. So you going back?
I'll go back. I'm glad you upgraded me to president.
Oh, did I say? Great stuff.
It's good. I started as
At least I didn't say that.
Great stuff. That was great.
Then President Trump departed Egypt on Air Force One. During the summit, Egyptian President el-Sisi had awarded President Trump Egypt's highest state honor, which is called the Order of the Nile. The Order of the Nile traces back to Egypt's monarchical past when it was used to confer knighthood upon its recipient. President Trump said that he was deeply honored to receive the award. Meanwhile, several Democrat journalists and officials praised President Trump for the deal, even including Hillary Clinton, The View's Farrah Griffin, and CNN's Clarissa Ward, among others. During The View today, Co-host Alyssa Farah-Griffin said that President Trump and members of his team deserve credit.
Listen, whether you like Trump or not, I think Steve Witkoff and I think Jared Kushner do deserve credit for this deal. They actually personally met with Hamas. I used to be of the mind we don't negotiate with terrorists, but sometimes the only way to get peace is to sit down with some of the most evil people and try to come up with what we can do to end the bloodshed. So thank God, I pray that this peace holds.
Hillary Clinton also praised President Trump on Friday.
It's a really significant first step, and I really commend President Trump and his administration, as well as Arab leaders in the region, for making the commitment to the 20-point plan and seeing a path forward for what's often called the day after. Most importantly, the conflict hopefully will end with the ceasefire, the hostages will be returned, and then the very hard work of rebuilding Gaza, of finding the kind of security that Israel and the Palestinians after Hamas deserve to have, moving forward with the other points in the plan to try to create an opportunity for Palestinians to have a better life and for Israel to have greater peace and security. I am very hopeful that we'll be able to see progress. Today's a good start, but we have to keep going from.
And yesterday, CNN's Clarissa Ward described the scene in Israel and said the crowd lauded President Trump. Ward said, "I have to say, everywhere you go here, there are posters of Trump. We have seen people who have made artifacts dedicated to Trump. Fair to say that President Trump is possibly even more popular here than he is in the United States." So from his Knesset speech today, it seems that after wrapping up the Gaza peace deal, President Trump's next move is aiming for peace between Ukraine and Russia. Also, President Trump said yesterday that he may authorize giving Ukraine long-range Tomahawk missiles if Russia continues to wage war. President Trump added that he might first speak with Putin. Talking with reporters before he boarded Air Force One for his trip to Israel, President Trump had said that he spoke with Ukrainian President Zelensky about the weapons. According to the weapons manufacturer Raytheon, Tomahawk missiles have a range of about 1,000 miles, which would allow Ukraine to strike targets as far away as Moscow if the U.S. provides them to Ukraine. President Trump previously said that he had pretty much made a decision on the sale of Tomahawk missiles, but he wanted to know how Ukraine intended to use them. President Trump has made clear that he does not want the Ukraine-Russia war to escalate any further. Zelensky also said yesterday that he spoke with President Trump for the second time in 2 days to discuss strengthening Ukraine's air defense, resilience, and long-range capabilities. Zelensky wrote on X, "President Trump is well informed about everything that is happening. We agreed to continue our dialogue and our teams are doing their preparations." Elon Musk has accused OpenAI, which is led by Sam Altman, of being built on lies. This sharp criticism has attracted widespread attention within the industry. Musk's comments were prompted by a tweet from Helen Toner, a former OpenAI board member. Toner's original post addressed her complex emotions following her departure from OpenAI. Her comments highlighted issues with the company's internal policy operations and power struggles. Musk reposted her message and he added a brief comment saying, "OpenAI is built on a lie." In response to a user's query about OpenAI's non-profit status, Musk said they stole a charity and used it for their own financial gain. And this is not the first time Musk has criticized OpenAI. He criticized OpenAI over media reports suggesting that the company might become a for-profit organization. He called the move illegal and argued that OpenAI had strayed from its founding mission in 2015 to benefit humanity. OpenAI was originally established as a nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing safe and open AI research, rather than generating profits for shareholders. The company is now considering transitioning to a for-profit benefit corporation, a move that Musk views as a betrayal of public trust. Benzinga News noted that Musk has repeatedly publicly questioned OpenAI's transparency and ethical foundation in recent years while sounding the alarm on AI governance. He has previously stated that without regulation and public scrutiny, AI could lead to monopolization and misuse of the technology. His renewed focus on the nonprofit structure has been interpreted as a counterattack against Altman and his team's long-standing practice of operating with blurred lines. In the reposted content, Toner also shared her mixed feelings about OpenAI's internal culture. She acknowledged the company's strengths in research and oversight frameworks, such as the introduction of system cards and the promotion of COT monitoring. However, she also criticized management for being dishonest when implementing policies and for resorting to intimidation tactics. This passage also gave Musk a reason to refire his criticism. In 2024, OpenAI experienced a major power struggle among its top leadership. Toner and other board members attempted to oust Altman, but the incident ultimately concluded in Altman returning to his position as CEO. As AI continues to evolve, these issues will likely remain at the forefront of discussions about the future of the technology. This conflict over AI ethics, control, and funding structures is no longer merely a private feud between two tech giants, but rather a microcosm of the broader global AI industry governance and power alignment. So, AI remains an area of great importance to the Trump administration. President Trump's recent fury toward the Chinese Communist Party is also related to AI. The Wall Street Journal reported that under the Chinese Communist Party's latest rare earth regulations, any foreign company whose products contain specific rare earth materials that are sourced from China with a value exceeding 0.1% must obtain approval from the CCP government. Joseph Hoffer, the head of AI affairs at the tech lobbying firm Monument Advocacy, bluntly stated that this is a real pain for U.S. AI companies. It amounts to an economic war aimed at destroying America's AI industry. This is because technology companies struggle to prove that the rare earth content in their chips, production equipment, and components is below 0.1%. The Chinese Communist Party's policy will inevitably result in the entire supply chain being controlled by Beijing. Gracelyn Bhaskaran, the director of critical minerals at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, stated that this represents the most stringent export controls imposed by the Chinese Communist Party to date, granting it leverage to compel compliance from U.S. and global enterprises. The Wall Street Journal report highlights that the U.S. and other nations are investing hundreds of billions of dollars to expand data centers, positioning AI as a primary economic engine. Should the Chinese Communist Party leverage rare earth controls to dominate critical technology supply chains, it could attempt to coerce Washington into concessions during tariff and technology regulation negotiations. This presents a significant challenge for the Trump administration. Some analysts suggest that this time the Chinese Communist Party appears to have come prepared and is ready to openly sever ties with the United States. This is because the new policies were not raised in private at the negotiating table between the CCP and the U.S., but were instead announced publicly without prior consultation. Once announced as national policy, it is unlikely that they will be retracted, as this would result in a loss of face, causing the Chinese people to doubt the government's stance and resolve, and it would undermine domestic governance. In the United States, if the Chinese Communist Party refuses to make concessions on the rare earth issue, then the U.S. will be unable to lift other trade sanctions. Given this, the watershed moment in U.S.-China relations could be just around the corner. However, despite claims that a meeting with Xi Jinping may not be particularly necessary, President Trump did not completely rule out the possibility of a meeting when he was questioned by reporters. When the leaders of two countries meet, they must first agree on the terms internally. However, this negotiation process can be quite challenging. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for your support of Front Page. Please remember to leave a comment below the video. This is really helping us to be seen all around the world. The more people who watch Front Page, the more freedom-loving people the world will have. And please hit the like button and hit the notification bell after subscribing. And please share this video with your friends and family because everybody deserves to know the truth.